This is the Huion Kamvas Pro 19, a new 18.4-inch pen tablet. And I really like this thing, and let me tell you why. Hello, my name is Brad. I review tech for creative professionals, and the reason why I think this is such a great display, apart from the really nice pen control, is the size and the weight. My favorite size drawing tablet has always been around 16 inches, and the main reason why is when you get really big, like in the 20, 22, 24, 27 inch, those things are really anchored to your desk. They're hard to move around unless you have them like anchored on an arm or something like that. Whereas these smaller ones are really easy to just move around your desk, place where you want to. You can even pull them off your desk, get them onto your lap if you want to kind of recline a little bit when using them. And 16 inches is a really good size because at that size, your interface elements aren't getting too small, especially if you're in like Clip Studio or Photoshop, where those type of things really take up a lot of space. But this one is just a little bit bigger. So taking a look at what comes in the box, we have the Kamvas Pro display itself, all 18.4 inches of it. It is surprisingly thin and light. It's coming in at around 4.5 pounds. It's kind of curved underneath, but at its thickest point, it's about an inch thick. Included is also the pen kit. This comes with 2 pens, some extra nibs. You have all your different cables for connecting. What's interesting here is there is a 3-in-1 cable. So if you want to connect this with an HDMI port and a standard USB type A port, you can do that with this cable. Now, some of the smaller tablets like this that Huion makes, you can just use one single USB type C cable. This one does need to draw some power, so you do have that extra power cord here. Now, the plus side of having a power cable connected to your drawing tablet is your laptop can also draw power from that as well. And for a lot of laptops, that's going to clear up an extra USB type C port. Also included in the box is a mini key dial shortcut remote, a cleaning cloth, a nice little quick start guide to get you going, and yes, a drawing glove. Don't I have some other footage I can use here instead? Now, this tablet does come in around $1,000, so I would consider it a professional level tablet. Probably not the best for beginners unless you have a lot of money to throw around. If you are just getting started in digital art, check out my courses over at bradsartschool.com. I have a Learn to Draw in 60 Days course there where every day there's a different lesson. Each lesson builds upon itself. It's a great place to start before you jump into like higher end, more complicated tutorials. If you'd like to learn more, check them out over at bradsartschool.com. All right, let's talk about the hardware itself, the pen display. If you flip it over around the back, there's these 2 fold-out feet. This is something that Huion's been including in a lot of their tablets lately. This is something that Wacom used to do with their tablets, and I loved it because it sets it up at it's about a 20-degree angle, which is perfect for drawing. There's also some holes along the back, so if you want to mount some kind of like VESA mount type stand or anything like that and get more degrees, or use this as an extra monitor that you want to set up at 90 degrees, you can totally do that. That costs extra. In fact, Huion actually sells one on their site, so if you want to pick one up before you check out, you could do that. This display is full 4K. That's 3,840 pixels by 2,160 pixels. It is only 60 hertz though. That's one of the few features that isn't here that you'll find on the Wacom Cintiq Pro 17. They are color calibrating and then testing that calibration in the factory before they ship these out. In fact, in the box, there's this little sheet of paper with your calibration test results on it. And in general, this display looks really, really good. Even though there's like a matte screen coating that they put on this, the colors still pop, the blacks still look pretty rich, not as quite as much as like you'd see on a glossy display or an OLED display, but I think for most people, you're going to look at this and say, this looks really good. This is a new matte texture that Huion is using on their displays. I talked about it a little bit if you saw the 27 Pro review I did just about a week or so ago. It's not a huge difference over the last one, but I can definitely tell it is a little bit different because those colors do pop a little bit more. The trade-off that they're making, however, is it's not as grippy. It doesn't have quite the same texture to it. But on the plus side, the pen includes like these little marker felt tip pen nibs, which are a little bit rougher, which is a nice trade-off because you're getting a similar feel that you used to get with a more grippier texture that you got on there because they're using like a grippier pen nib. It also means that I'm probably never going to go back to the simple black pen nibs, the plastic ones that they also include in the case, but that's all right. It's also worth noting this is a multi-touch display. Now, this is a tale of 2 operating systems here. If you're on the Mac, it's not enabled, so you're not going to be able to use it. If you're on a PC, if you're using Windows, it actually works really well. Now, I did find that the palm rejection was only okay. I didn't get a lot of like accidental marks on my canvas like I do on many Android tablets that are using Wacom drivers, but one thing that I did get, and I probably found it more on the larger 27-inch than I found on this 19 one, was that I was often accidentally like changing layers if my palm would hit some interface elements along the side in Photoshop. This is where the drawing glove that they include in the box comes into play. This thing has some extra stitching and stuff like that along the side, and most drawing gloves are like super duper thin. Because of that extra padding, that extra stitching, this also helps with that palm rejection thing. I did run into one problem when I was using the touch screen. When I was pinching to zoom or moving around the screen or anything, my touch inputs were actually being registered on my second monitor. Now, if I only have one monitor plugged in, if the drawing tablet is the only thing, it's not a problem. And if this is my primary monitor, also not a problem. But if it's set up as my number 2 monitor, it does seem to be a problem. I haven't figured out how to fix that yet. Let's take a closer look at the pen. This pen box is really nice. It feels really premium. Of course, it houses our 2 pens. It houses all of those extra nibs that I was talking about a minute ago. Both of these pens are Huion's new pens. These both have 16,000 levels of pressure. What does that mean? It means you have more pressure than you will ever need. For me, I find once you get to like 2,000, maybe even 4,000, you don't really notice like the increased level of pressure sensitivity, but I guess it's nice to have. If you can put the tech in your pen, might as well put it there. One thing I did notice here, and I noticed it on the 27 Pro, I tested a few weeks ago as well, is that the initial activation rate is really fantastic on here. If you're drawing like super duper light, it's still gonna pick up that line. Like you really have to like draw incredibly light-handed for it to not register any line at all. And then of course, as you apply more pressure, it's going to give you a thicker line, more paint's going to come out of your brush. And I found that that pressure curve, just at its default, was really good. I didn't have to go in there tweak it anywhere. The flow seemed really organic. There was nowhere where it was really like blowing out or giving me more pressure around curves than I wanted. I just had a ton of control over it. How is the wave on the pen? It is fantastic. This might be the best pen that Huion has ever made. It is hard to find wave in this thing. If you watched my review of the 27-inch Pro, you may have noticed that I did talk about the wave on the Mac, even though it seemed to be fine on the PC. And when I went to test this tablet after testing the last one, I plugged it in because it uses the same exact drivers. I didn't find any wave here, which I thought was really strange. So I went back and I plugged in my 27-incher and the wave was gone there as well. And I've been going back and forth for days trying to replicate the wave that I originally found on that pen, either on the 19 or the 27. I can't find it. So I'm going to just chalk this one up to user error. It probably was some conflict with some other driver or something I was running on my computer at the time. Whatever it was, it's gone now. And these pen lines look fantastic. I've also gone back to that 27 review and cut that part out. And I think for most people, if you're coming from a Wacom pen and you're used to using that, jumping over to a Huion, you're going to be pleasantly surprised at how good it's gotten over the last few years. Also included here is our shortcut remote. This thing is light. It doesn't feel quite as premium as what I've seen from like Sense Labs or what Wacom has put out, but it gets the job done, right? All your shortcuts are here. You can program all of those things. It does what you need it to do. As I was using this, I kept thinking back to the Wacom Cintiq Pro 17 that I used back in the fall. They're very, very similar devices because you've got a touch display, you've got 4K on these things. They both look fantastic. And I think in general, you're probably not going to tell the difference between these two things. One of the reasons the Wacom costs so much more is because they're pushing into color spaces that the Huion is not. And unfortunately, when you do that, it really pushes up the price of the display. Some pros need that. If you're working in movies, animation, even some photographers, they want that Rec 709 color space, but I think for most illustrators, you're never gonna need that, and you're never gonna notice that it's missing. And I think it really puts Wacom in this weird spot where they're really trying to hit that highest of the high end, but unfortunately that really just pushes up the price of their display. Fortunately, Huion's coming in here at a decent price. I mean, $1,000 is still really expensive for what this is, but you're also getting a lot of the bells and whistles that you usually don't see on Huion displays, like touch, like that 4K. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with it. It's probably going to be overkill, a little too expensive for some illustrators, but if you're looking for a Huion, or I should say a Wacom replacement, and just don't want to pay that like super high price for their new Pro devices, this is a real alternative. But what do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.